Greetings everyone, Brad here with Mild-Mannered EDC. I hope you're all doing really well. So today we're going to take a look at the QSP Knives Hawk. There you go. So I picked this up over at Way of the Knife. Go check out that retailer. Pretty interesting, particularly because I was interested in this blue micarta and I couldn't find it really anywhere else, at least at the time when I was looking at it. So picked it up over there. And yeah, it's an interesting knife. You know, I've not actually featured too many QSPs on. In fact, I think this might be the first one I've done on the channel. I owned one previously, the QSP Nokomis, that I just actually wasn't a big fan of, and so I ended up sending it along somewhere else, but I didn't do a review of it. So anyways, this is the first QSP review here on the channel. So we are going to do a classic mild-mannered review today. And before we get into that, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who subscribes to the channel. I really do appreciate it. If you like knife content, if you're new to the channel, if this is popping up in your feed, knife or any other EDC, I'm trying to do a bit more variety out there on the channel.
Do or do not. There is no try.
I'd love your support, so maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. It would mean a lot. So there you go. Enough with that, right? Let's get out underway here with this particular review. And let's start with a couple of size comparisons. Let's start with the Hogue Doug Ritter RSK. This is the smaller one. It's got a longer name. I can never remember the whole name, but a really good knife. Let me bump these down a little so you can get a better sense. Here's a Spyderco Delica. So, you know, I mean, it's very much a medium-sized knife. Very good size for EDC, at least in my opinion. So there you go. A couple of size comparisons. Let's talk some specs here before we get underway with the review in earnest. So we've got a blade length here on the Hawk of 3.25 inches. We've got a blade thickness of 0.12 inches, a handle length when it's all closed up here of 4.12 inches, and a handle thickness a little bit chubby of 0.53 inches, so a little over half an inch, which is a little bigger than I normally like, but there you go. What are you gonna do? All right, so when it's opened up overall here at 7.57 inches and a weight of 3.58 ounces, not bad at all, but we'll talk about maybe where they could have done a little bit more on the weight saving, maybe a little later in the video. So with that, let's go ahead and get underway with this review. When we do a classic mild-mannered review, like we're going to do today, we talk about the blade, we talk about the action, scales and hardware, and then ergos and carry. All right, so let's talk blade. Let's start off with the steel, shall we? 14C28N, very, very good budget steel. In fact, it's one of my favorite budget steels, just an all-around good performer for the money. And, you know, this particular knife coming in at about 55 bucks. Yeah, I think that's 14C28N is a good price for that kind of steel and some of the other materials on this particular knife. So there you go, 14C28N. For the blade here, we've got a flat ground, satin finished kind of blade, and you've got more of a satiny on the primary bevel here, but then you've got a kind of, I know, brushed finish here up on the flats. If maybe that comes in, if I can get that so it's not glaring. There you go, a little bit. You will notice the QSP logo kind of bleeds down over into the grind, or the bevel. Yeah, it's a little picky. I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Something a little weird there, right? Maybe they could have rearranged that a little bit. In fact, I actually like this logo better here on the pivot, and maybe it would have been nicer just to put it there. You've got sort of two different brands going on here, so yeah, I don't know. It's a little funky to me. But other than that, a pretty sterile blade. So there you go. You do have thumb studs, a little bit of jimping, nice drop point design. And in fact, one of the reasons, like I said, this knife sort of spoke to me is just sort of the overall aesthetic. I think it's a pretty good looking knife in general. You do have a nice grind. There you go. The grind termination point, well done. No smile or anything like that. And this finger choil, which is, I think, what it is definitely on the smaller side, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in ergos. But yeah, it's done just fine. Everything is pretty nicely chamfered, except for some fairly aggressive jimping up here and on the flipper tab as well. And since we're talking about flipper tab, let's talk action. So you can, using this flipper tab, which, well, I'll talk about in a sec, you can flip it, you can flick it, You can Spidey flick it. There you go. Variety of things you can do there to get this knife open for you. Except shake. It's got a nice detent. But no, it's got a very, very nice action. And I'm nothing, it's riding uncaged. See if you can see that. Ooh, I've got a light kind of flickering on me there. Sorry about that. You've got a cage steel ball bearings here on the knife. Hey, pretty standard these days. Opens quite well. Nothing really to complain about. I will say, if there is any complaint around the action, and it's maybe not fair, it might be overly nitpicky. I'm not a huge fan of this flipper tab. I don't know why. I mean, it definitely works perfectly fine. There's no issue there. But I feel like it can't quite decide if it wants to be a light switch or a push button or what. And so they just went ahead and jimped the whole thing fairly aggressively. So I don't know. I get the low profile that they were sort of going for here, but it just feels like it's can't quite decide the best way to open it, because trying to open it using a push button is not great, especially if you're using kind of this larger pad. So it's definitely, you're either push buttoning on this corner or you are flipping it. And like I said, flipping is not bad at all, but it's just, there's not a whole lot there. So I guess they do need jimping so you can get the purchase. But anyways, I'm rambling on there probably more than I need to on that, but just something that I kind of came away with. Now, it is a liner lock, and it's locking up at about, you can see that in there, about 50%. Very, very good. No blade rock, no blade play, anything like that. So, overall, very consistent with what I understand are sort of the way QSP does their knives, which is, some nice fit and finish, good tolerances, all of those things. So that's certainly evident here in the action, at least in my opinion. So pretty well done on that front, especially again for that $55 price. You could do a lot worse, that's for sure. Okay, scales and hardware. One of the main reasons I like this knife was this really beautiful blue micarta, and I think it's actually showing up pretty well on camera. It sort of, fades in and out between sort of a teal color, a tealish, into a denim blue. There's like little hints of green almost in there, particularly in here. It's really nice, really, really nice. It's finished well. There's no sort of rough edges or anything like that. It's a really nicely done micarta. So it's one of probably my favorite part of this knife is just the look of that micarta, look and feel.
I'm pretty but tough like a diamond, or beef jerky in a ball gown.
It's, there's enough to give you a little bit of that micarta traction that people like, but also being quite smooth in and out of the pocket. So there you go. So that's what you've got there on the scales. You do have, I mentioned, this QSP pivot, which I like because it's flush, and I like the little design there. Flush on the back, flush screws here, a little bit of a lanyard hole there. You do have stainless steel liners, and I don't know if you can see, but they are not skeletonized. And as I mentioned earlier, I would have liked to have seen that. I think that would have helped with the weight a little bit. Not that this is a heavy knife by any stretch of the imagination at 3.5 ounces, but I think maybe just a little bit more skeletonization would have been nice, especially being that they are stainless steel liners. And a lot of knives these days, in this price range seem to be doing that, even on the budget end. So it would be nice to, have seen that. It's not a make or break, and it's probably, frankly, more of a nitpick than it is anything else, but, something to think about. So there you go. You do have a couple barrel standoffs here, pillars, barrels, whatever, and sort of flow through construction. So that's what we've got here with scales and hardware. Ergos and carry. So the Ergos are pretty darn good. I can get 4 fingers on this knife pretty comfortably. I will say this comes back to get you a little bit here, at least in my opinion, with my 4-finger, index finger here on this, the jimping that we talked about on this flipper tab. When it's opened up, it does dig in just a slightly bit, as if you're putting any sort of pressure kind of bearing down. The jimping up here where your thumb is plenty nice, but yeah, other than that, Ergo's pretty good. Choking up sort of alleviates that for me. But again, this isn't a full finger choil, and so choking up is a little precarious, so you don't slice your finger open right with that. So, just keep that in mind. But maybe if you have skinnier fingers than my Shrek paws, you might be a little bit better off. You do have a deep carry pocket clip, which is done quite nicely. As you can see, I would have liked maybe the screws to be a bit more reset, but again, $55, I'm not going to knock them too hard for that. And it is deep carry, which is nice. It is only right side tip up though, not ambidextrous carry. I will say there's There's a little bit of a ski jump there. It might have been nice to see maybe them folding them over. And, maybe just in general, I'm just trying to be too picky on a $55 knife that isn't intended to be, a work of art. It's let's kind of call it there in the review. I mean, I think that fills all the categories. Overall, my impression, this is a nice knife. It's a good knife. There's nothing wrong with this knife in terms of functionality or safety or any glaring flaws. I think if anything, I was just looking at maybe more nitpicky stuff than anything else. And for $55, I think this is a very well put together knife. I think it's an attractive knife. I like the design. I like the look. And, like I said, in this highly competitive price range, I think you could do a lot worse. So, overall, I like this a lot. I think it's probably not going to stick around in my collection necessarily. But I think if it's, if you're sort of picking up when it's putting down, I think it's definitely one to look at. And especially if you like QSP, or if you're thinking about checking out a QSP, this may be, a good option. They've got a couple other cool ones out there that I know people really like, the Penguin, and I think there's a few others, but, yeah, so there you go. That's my review here of the, QSP. I think that was an incoming email you probably heard right there. The QSP, Hawk. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks so much for stopping by. Clearly the emails are coming in fast and furious here. I better get back to work. But most importantly, stay safe out there, be mild-mannered to one another, and all the best.